10 into 10 is only 100. But 13 into 13 is 169. It's a 69% jump. Right? So 30 on 30 is 900 square feet. Right? But if you make 33 by 33, it jumps by. So it would have jumped to 10-15% more, which at that moment you had your finances figured out in a particular way. Right? And so that's okay. But these things are there in every project. There is no project which is untouched by all these factors. And you can't call them failures. You can't even call them mistakes. They are neither mistakes, they are neither failures. They are just, and I think the best of architecture, the arty architecture happens like if Prabha builds again, right? Finds a beautiful spot somewhere and says, can we do another one? This time it will be a song. This time it will be a song because we are friends. Right? So the idea now is to how quickly can we befriend a client? Rather than thinking of a client as a problem and what needs to be tackled, you start to say, how can I engage with this guy and make him friends, make him or her my own and my team member. So as an architect, you expand yourself. Right? And so that's what is this journey about. That's why you mature as an architect much later in life, and the joys of it also start to come much later in life. So I called myself an architect only when I turned 50. I never called myself architect me. In one of the BNI meetings I turned 50 and I introduced myself to an audience and I said I'm architect me. Otherwise I always say I'm Neil, I'm trying to be an architect. So I've just been 5 years into saying I'm an architect and I can give you services as an architect, a reasonable architect can and should, and I have the capacity to delight. So we did all these times, Prabha's house being one step on that journey to become an architect. So we're very grateful to all those people who have trusted us with money, with emotion, with sentiments, with land, right? On the way, because you can't become a doctor operating on guinea pigs, right? So you need real projects, you need real clients. And later in life, you realize that they were the ones who shaped your career. And this house is one of those watershed moments in our career. Not for anybody else. You must have, I think you spoke to Manoj sir. Mm-hmm. So we work for appreciation from people like him. So I remember my friend from SPA, he was product design head at some university in the US. We had come visiting. We had just cast the first floor slab and we had the model. The model was there in Balsa, the whole thing, and यार तू तो architecture कर रहा है यार. So there were just those 4 columns and the slab and the corners were coming and.
So you mean that thermocol?
Thermocol and there's a balsa model also.
Okay.
Balsa wood model. I'll come to models. They're very very interesting things. And for this house, that model, and then later a young girl made a model of the house. Right. So that's interesting how it went from model to model. And that's what is the power and grace of architecture. It affects people very deeply. But I think I'm kind of continuing on my track. I would like you to
complete that thing that you were saying. So the strength product designer came and you were doing models.
So you said for the architecture. See, a lot of my friends, others,
what does that mean?
singer saying or a musician saying that now your song is a song. It sounds like a song. Right? Architecture कर रहा है. So you are not just building, you are doing architecture. It's a difference. There's a difference. You are not just constructing. You are not just building spaces. You are actually the music is coming. I can. That's what he said.
What did you think were some of Prabha Auntie's interesting insights, and what did you think was different about the way that she looked at this project that it came out so unique?
One was, I think, she had an aspiration definitely of having something unique. Right? So, with what she had done with her life and career, and what she had seen of the world, and of the people that she was moving with, the books she was reading. So all of them have an impact. Then the houses, the flat in which she was living, which is one of the most beautiful apartment complexes in Bangalore at that time. Right, so she was choosing the aesthetic and not choosing the mundane. So her choices through her own life and career had evolved just like ours, because we grew up in very similar households where there were no drawers, there were no full cupboards, there's a concrete shelf for the cooking gas. Right, so when we were young, we had homes and lived in homes which had to have a bathroom in the house and not having to go out was, you had arrived, right? And you had wood fire chimneys still in the house, so gas just arrived. So we belong to that generation where our parents, for them, how you are thinking about AI, they thought about the radio. We were the TV generation. Right, for us, seeing those images pop up and the Doordarshan symbol. So we had actually a big ask, and I think kudos to this generation, our parents, I think, from us parents and ours. They have seen the bullock cart and they have gone in the flight. And for one generation, so they were all born during independence. Why I touch upon these matters is because all of it is there in this structure. So I remember that conversation very vividly where Prabha used to ask her father every day whether he is liking what's happening. And he would not reply. He would not reply to that question. He would say, yeah, this happened, that happened. Neil came, he broke all the slabs, right? And masons lifted these cornices to the top and stuff like that, but he would never answer our last question, Dad, do you like it? And I think somewhere we were becoming friends. Even at that time, as we were building, there was something which was engaging for both of us, and she called me and said, Neil, ये सब कर रहे हैं, इतना पैसा कर रहे हैं, तुम लोग इतना मेहनत कर रहे हो, but am I doing the right thing? Because Dad, when I asked him, he never says anything. So I took it like a serious matter that a friend is going through. So you give it space and you think about it. And I seriously thought about it for a couple of days. And then I called her out. I said, Baba, we were a generation which grew from having only one uniform. It would get washed every day. Right, and there were these Bata white shoes, and you had to put chalk on it to make it ready for the next day's sports. But we were also a generation where we started to get choices. We started to see menus. We started to go to restaurants. But uncle, my father, mother, these people, they never had a menu. They didn't have two options of food. They were never asked ever, do you like this or you don't? You were given one thing, you accepted it with all the joys that you could carry within you. So there's a lesson there, but there's also an understanding that not everything is about having choices. It's a lot about enjoying what you are given. Right? So he started to enjoy these circles. He said, Neil ने हमारे घर में 4 चांद लगा दिए. Like, that's how you take people into the house. A house that he's now lived, but that time he had not even lived it. He would not even know whether it will function for him, not function for him. But he enjoyed that. That whole process was enjoyable for him. Our efforts were enjoyable for him. The sweat of the masons and the carpenters was enjoyable for him. And what was difficult for him, and which was difficult for Prabha, was that the whole kitchen counter would be full of things. Though there were drawers to keep things inside. And I told her, and I connected her to that fact that there were never any drawers in our homes when we were children. So for them not to see it on the counter meant it was not there. So architecture is something which, but that, I told her, it's not that we should not make drawers. That doesn't mean that. Because in time, so this house has decluttered itself over time. Right? There was a time I would come and I would not take photos. Right? But there is a time now when I can shoot any part of the house. But that's been a journey that this house has put the inmates through. Yeah? So they say you shape your architecture. It's a very obnoxious fellow who made this quote. Churchill. Right? But he said, you make your architecture and then that architecture makes you. Right? But it's true. It shapes. So I had a friend in school who was already living in a big house. Like there were these government quarters, so he was living in one of the larger quarters. So his bathroom was like a bedroom. And when did I realize that? I didn't have any peeve or any realization when I was a student, going to his house, chilling around. But when we both shifted to Delhi for our studies, higher studies, and we lived in one Jia Sarai, one small rented apartment, and there was a teeny little toilet. And I would put my clothes on the bed, wrap my towel around, go into the shower, have my shower as quickly as possible,